Welcome, welcome to those of you that have logged in a minute early. Thank you for being early. We're just going to give everyone a minute before we dive in. So we'll just hang out. Hope everyone's had a wonderful week so far. Those of you in the United States, I hope all of you had a wonderful July 4th celebration. I put in my earplugs to try to get to bed early. With mixed results. Maybe what we can do while we wait for people to log in is, if you're in the US, put in the chat, if you're comfortable, what time you were able finally to make it to bed last night. I'll start. Again, welcome to the webinar. We're just giving everyone a minute to get started. And just as a little bit of an icebreaker, if you're in the US, just a quick question to put in the chat. What time were you able to make it to bed last night? Because here, of course, there are fireworks happening till quite late in the evening. Oh, okay. Thank you for letting me know that chat is disabled. This has been a problem, so I believe I know how to fix it. I was trained on how to fix this, so just a moment. You're just joining us. Chat is disabled. Just for a moment. Let's see. Just give me a minute to try to remember how to do this. Okay, can someone try chatting now? Okay, whew, got it figured out. Thank you, everyone. So we'll try this again. As a, actually, let me hit record too. I got to do all my, oh, we are recording, great. So as a little bit of icebreaker, for those of you in the US, of course, it was the 4th of July yesterday. And so we're just taking an informal poll. What time did you finally make it to bed last night? So I said 10 p.m. I tried with earplugs. Sterling says 12:15, which is very impressive. Yeah, we got a 10, great. 11. Jesse, I'm sorry. That, I was joking with some friends this morning. I was on a group run that every neighborhood, at least if you're in suburbia like I am, seems to have that family that loves fireworks. And so that happens to be my actual immediate neighbor. So they were putting on quite a show. So anyway, happy 4th of July for those of you in the US. Okay, let's get started. Now it's 11:04. It took me a minute to figure out how to enable chat. Welcome to this webinar, How to Build an L&D Chatbot Using Mobile Coach. I'm Vince Hahn. Great to have you with us. I have a couple of panelists, wonderful colleagues supporting me today, Sterling Mason and Marina, and they will both be monitoring Q&A and the chat for me. Marina will also be helping me with some links throughout the webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and so you will get a link to the recording sometime, hopefully later today, but certainly no later than tomorrow. This will be a little bit of an interactive webinar. So I understand if you're multitasking, that's great, but I will say that, and we'll also get into some more technical show and tell, because this is how to build an L&D chatbot. So I think the more that you can kind of focus on what we're doing, the more that you'll get out of it. And at any time, please raise your hand or use the Q&A or the chat to put in a question, or if I'm going too fast or too slow. So we're going to begin by interacting with a chatbot. So we're going to interact with a little trivia game. So I'm going to put on this screen, and then I'm going to ask Marina, and she already has done this. She's put in the link to interact with this chatbot through Microsoft Teams if you'd like. You can also interact with the chatbot with a web widget. A web widget would just open up a browser on your computer, and then the chatbot will pop up. If you'd like, you can also try this through SMS. And if you want to try it through SMS, you can just type in this new number on your phone, this number 626 number, and then text hi. Now, the web widget is going to be the easiest, especially if you don't have Teams. I would recommend choosing the modality that you might think would be most applicable to whatever chatbot project you're thinking about. So if you have an audience where you're thinking, boy, SMS would be great to reach them, try this on SMS, the 626 number. Otherwise, Teams or web widget would be a great option for you. Karen's saying that the links are not clickable. If they're not, they should be. They are for me. If not, you can copy and paste them into your browser. Even the Teams one. If you copy and paste that Teams link into your browser, it should spawn Teams if you happen to have Teams already on your computer. Can someone else maybe put in the chat whether these links are working for you, just so that we know that no other gremlins are sabotaging our webinar? Great, thank you, Liz and Laura. Wonderful, great. I think there's maybe 20 questions in this little trivia game. We won't do all of them. Maybe I'll suggest if you could answer the first 4 or 5 questions into the point where you get to a leaderboard. Try doing that, and then we will continue on. While you're trying that and focusing on answering questions like how many players are on a soccer team or a football team, I will say that one of the points to make about chatbots is that you can have a chatbot on different messaging channels, like Microsoft Teams, like web widgets, like SMS. Anywhere you're messaging people, you can likely have a chatbot. So Slack, WebEx Teams, WhatsApp, Telegram, really all these different messaging channels support chatbots. And so oftentimes when you're thinking about a chatbot to support learners, you ask yourself, where are our learners messaging already? And can we have a chatbot there? So yeah, don't feel pressure to answer all these questions correctly. Sometimes it's interesting to see what the design is like if you answer a question incorrectly. So, all right, so I think I have a screenshot of this is what the use case should look like in Teams if you're in Teams. So the first question was, which natural disasters measured with a Richter scale? And you can see in this case, I had answered the question incorrectly. I did that on purpose, of course. And you can see how the chatbot answers. Yeah, so this gamification demo has leaderboards so it's keeping track of your score and having leaderboards. It also is leveling up, as Karen has mentioned. It offers badges too. So you can think about all these different ways to interact or to design the automation to drive engagement. So now what I'm going to do, I want to just give you a preview. So the use cases we're going to cover today, we'll do this pretty quickly: training reinforcement, onboarding, performance support, coaching. I want to show you an example of an interactive course via chatbot if we have time. But I want to start by just doing a quick intro to what building a chatbot looks like. So let me log in here. Oops. Oh, Karen, if you would like to, I see that you've raised your hand. If you'd like to put your question in the Q&A, or if it's easier, let me know if it's easier for you, if you want to be unmuted and in the chat, I'd be happy to unmute you if you want to ask your question. Okay, so while we wait for that, this is the Mobile Coach platform. I'll let you stare at this for a second. But when you'll probably recognize the first few messages here. So, hi, I'm Sam. Welcome to Trivia. Text stop to end the game. What's your name? So, and then you've got some instructions. Awesome, Vince. If you put in your first name, I'm waving my mouse around so you can see what I mean. I've got a little thumbs up emoji. I'll ask you a series of questions, and you'll earn points and level up as you answer them correctly. Blah, 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 blah. And then here's the first question: which natural disaster is measured with a Richter scale? So if you think about, okay, you've experienced this now. So how do we make this happen? How do we make, what's the logic that we need to make this happen? Well, first of all, I needed a first message. So when you start the chatbot, you need to author the first message, which is this right here. So if I double click on that, really I can type whatever I want. So I can type in my introduction. I can name Sam something else if I wanted. And I can attach some media if I wanted it to be like an image or a video. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward. But now I have to think about things like, oh, I'm asking the user for their name. What do I want to do with that? And then I want to ask myself questions like, oh, well, this is a game. So if someone's playing the game, I need to set their point total. So I'm going to set their point total as 0 to start with. And then when they answer their name, I want to send the next message. So here's all the pieces of logic that I have to figure out. I'm not going to show you everything. We don't have time in the webinar to show you every piece of functionality, but I want to at least show you conceptually what's happening. So let's say that you got this first message, like many of you did. What's your name? What if someone doesn't answer the question? What do I want the chatbot to do? So in the control section, we have different controls to help you design that user experience. So here I've got checked, wait until the next schedule rule. Let's say someone starts playing the game and then their phone rings, or someone knocks on their door in their office. You can't predict what's happening with them. And so they have intention to answer and to play, but you don't know if they're going to, when they're going to answer. And so I want to give people plenty of time to answer this question. So I'm just going to let the chatbot wait until they answer the question, until I might schedule a rule to override it. And so that I might wait a day, I might wait an hour. You can sort of choose how to do that. And of course, when someone answers with their name, I want to capture that information and save it so I can use it later. And where do I want to use it? I want to use it on a leaderboard. I want to use it in a message to say, let's say the next day I say, hey, Vince, how's it going today? I want to save their name. And then, of course, I want to move them on to the next question. So that's what's happening in the conditions and actions section here. And again, we're not going to go through every line item here, but essentially that's what I'm doing. I'm capturing the name. So that's what the set user field is. I'm setting their points at 0 because this is a game. Then I want to send them to the next rule. And all of this logic applies whether you're interacting with the chatbot on SMS or on a web widget or on Teams or Slack. And maybe the last thing I'll show you before we move on is the calendaring. So this first burst of activity that you tried using this trivia game was all in one setting. And since it's in one sitting, I don't need to calendar items. But let's say that I wanted to send a question a day for this game, then I can schedule a message to be pushed to you Monday at 12 o'clock or Wednesday at 2 o'clock or whatever time that I want. So this is the calendaring portion of the authoring tool. So we're going to get into other aspects of our authoring tool today, but hopefully this at least visually gives you an idea of how to build a chatbot. Now, this tab that we're in, see the scripts tab there? this is the place to put together your programmatic or rules-based messages, the messages that you really want to sort of micromanage because you're controlling the experience. So everything here, the platform is going to behave exactly like you configure it. So if you want the message to be sent at 12 o'clock, it's not going to decide, oh, I'll just send it at 2 o'clock. No, it's going to send right at 12 o'clock. If you want the chatbot to say, hello, first name, it's going to do exactly that. Now, there are times where you may want the chatbot to be a little bit more flexible and to have some artificial intelligence in there. And we do support that. And I'm going to show you how to do that, but that's going to be on a different screen. But now that you experience that game, this is how this game was configured. And if you, I can just show you, scroll, there's a bunch of different messages, all the different questions, what's the right answer, what's the wrong answer, how to award points, all of that stuff is configured using script, controls, and conditions and actions. I don't know if this looks confusing to you. It's actually pretty straightforward to do. As long as you can write and you can stay somewhat organized and keep track of what you're doing. It's really not that difficult to do. And it can be really, really engaging because it's a chatbot. So hopefully that answers, or that gives you a little bit of perspective as we dig into these use cases. So yes, Mitch, we will be covering AI enhancements as part of. So if I go back to the agenda for both performance support and coaching, we will be talking about how we're integrated with AI and how they can be helpful, how AI can be helpful in both of those two use cases. You can integrate AI in all these use cases, but for today's webinar, I will show you specifically in those two use cases how we do that. Okay, so again, if people have questions about what they're seeing, please drop them in the Q&A or the chat. And I have two monitors going on, so if you see my eyes go this way, it's because I'm keeping an eye on the chat. Okay, so let's go over training reinforcement. So, I debated whether to call this training reinforcement. As the years go by, this term seems to feel a little bit dated every year. I don't know if that's how you feel. 10 years ago, when we started creating chatbots to support learning teams, this was sort of the de facto term. And the idea was someone went through, let's say, remember 10 years ago, someone went through a training, which back then was almost always instructor-led. And so one of the challenges with instructor-led was that while it was very engaging during the training, people forgot what they learned over time. So the idea behind training reinforcement was to design a chatbot to follow up with the learner over time. And I think that's still a really powerful use case, but nowadays training might look different. It might be spaced or blended. So I still think it's really useful to create a learning journey that's engaging the user over time, particularly on Teams or Slack or on SMS. So I want to show you just a couple design options. I'm going to do this through screenshots because I think being a visual is really helpful for me anyway. Take a look at this use case where we'll just maybe go through it together. So today's tip, identifying the gap between expected and actual performance. Check out your toolkit on page 8 for more info. So this assumes that you've been through some sort of training program and there's a toolkit that accompanies it. And so the chatbot's smart about the training you've been through. It's smart about the materials that you have to help support you. So again, step back and think about what functionality do you need to support this type of use case. So today's tip, this means that you've calendared this interaction. So this could be the week after training or 8 weeks after training. It could be on a Tuesday or on a Friday. So these are some of the things that you can design in terms of really, this is a proactive push that you're reaching out to the user. And so then there's a question, when there's a performance gap, do you consistently communicate what you really want for yourself and others, A, B, or C, waits for an answer, and then acknowledges the answer and gives some sort of follow-up interaction. So pretty simple, but again, if you're thinking about designing these types of nudges, that come in a friendly manner a couple times a week for a couple months, we have experience that this is really effective in helping people not only remember what they've learned, but they're going to be much more likely to apply what they've learned, which is, of course, what we all want. So here's another one from a chatbot named Pyra. Your assignment this week is to use one of your coaching plans to coach a first-line manager on your team. Now, in this case, the user says, oh, send me the coaching plans. And so the chatbot's smart enough to say, okay, here they are. So again, this is a pushed nudge to say, hey, here's your assignment. And then the content is completely customized to support the type of interaction that you want. Let's do another one. Hello, I'm Coach Colin from the New Manager Program. I'm here to help you apply your learning commitments. So in this case, you can read this text here. For the next 8 weeks, I'll text you one task at the beginning of the week, one mid-week reminder, and one final reminder at the end of the week. And this is going to happen for 8 weeks. this articulates one of our best practices for our training reinforcement use case, where you have the chatbot set expectations. So one very important point is that when you're creating a chatbot that's proactively pushing messages to your target audience, you want to be very careful that the chatbot doesn't feel spammy or feel invasive. It's okay for it to be interruptive because that's what you want. You want to interrupt people to remind them of the things that are important for this program. And so it's okay to interrupt. In fact, that's the very definition of sending a push, is that it's going to be interruptive. But it's really important to set those expectations so that people know, oh, well, this isn't going to happen for years. For 8 weeks, I can commit to focusing on improving my ability in this use case. So that just gives you a little bit of highlights of some of the training reinforcement use cases. Now what I want to do is go back to my platform, the Mobile Coach platform, and I've got to move my Zoom controls. And one of the things I wanted to show you, okay, so now I'm logged back into the platform. Let's go back to that trivia game. So this should be familiar to you. We just reviewed this. I want to show you, as part of the Mobile Coach platform, we have this script library up here. I'm going to click on that. And we have these existing chatbot scripts that help just jumpstart your user experience. So I'm going to go to training reinforcement. We have 16 scripts already. And I'm going to come down to, there's even one in Spanish. I'm going to come down to training reinforcement. Actually, let me just quickly read this description for you. A 4-week chatbot to support a specific training, seminar, or class, checks in 3 times a week. So when I click on that, I can see this chatbot script that's already pre-configured. And so I can actually import this into my Mobile Coach instance and just edit it. But I wanted to just show you how these are very similar to some of the screenshots that I showed you. So here's what should I call you, getting your name. Here's setting the expectations. Over the next month, I'll send you text to support the training. Each week, I'll give you a new challenge. And then if I come down here, you can see we have some default, like sort of template type user experiences. So here on week 1, day 5, this is on a Friday. Hi, have you completed a task? And so you can sort of then customize this once you have imported this into your own instance. You can just, I'll just kind of scroll a little bit so you can see what some of these messages say. Everything in parentheses is like just a template that you can, update and customize. We even have some nudges. So if someone doesn't reply in 4 hours, hey, I haven't heard from you yet. Have you finished this task? And so you can decide how aggressive you want to follow up with people, and different use cases warrant different, levels of how aggressive you can follow up with people. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit more so you can see. So this use case is just really following up with someone's a commitment to follow up with to follow through with a task. Okay, so there's a bunch of different scripts in the script library that you can follow. Okay, let's do onboarding. So I'm just watching the clock. I just want to keep moving. Now, for some of you might like, oh, I wanted more detail. So that's great. You can happy to give you more detail into scripts, specific use case. But today, trying to, in the time that we have, cover 5 different use cases. And I think there'll be a lot of interest in our AI integration. So I'm moving along. But if there are scripts that you want like full on copies of, just let us know. We'd be happy to share all of those. So onboarding. So onboarding could be new hire onboarding or any like a new manager onboarding, I think is very applicable. The chatbot's a great user experience for onboarding because, the part of onboarding is being inundated with lots of information as you start a new job or a new role. And the chatbot can be a great concierge, can be a great way to meet people where they are and give them just enough, sort of this micro learning, drip learning type of user experience versus a fire hose type of user experience. And so oftentimes with onboarding, there's an orientation process, which can be like being hooked up to a fire hose and getting way too much information than you can absorb. So a chatbot that gives people a spaced user experience can, I think, be very effective. So here's a screenshot of something administrative. You should have your computer, workspace, phone, network access by now. Do you need IT help? And you can see this chatbot's multifunctional. Not only is it pinging to reach out for potential problems, but also is able to create a ticket with IT and do some automated work for you. So I think that's another really great use for a chatbot. So that's a good example there for onboarding. So let's keep going. I still got to move my Zoom controls so I can figure out where I am. Okay, so another example. Okay, so woohoo, Paul, it's been a month since you've joined Company A. Of course, this is a template. This means you should have completed the marketing onboarding curriculum. Have you finished it? Yes or no? So not yet, no problem. So giving sort of a nudge. Also, this type of interaction can work really well for required compliance training for new hires, to follow up with them to make sure that they're finishing their requirements on time. And I wanted to show you one more screenshot, and then I'm going to go back to the platform and show you some of our script templates. One of the, I think, really key is oftentimes we're asked about ROI. How do you measure ROI for chatbots? And it's a great question. It depends on the use case and what kind of business outcomes you're looking for. One of the, I think, very important business outcomes for onboarding is retention and speed to productivity. And sometimes organizations are actually measuring those metrics. But let's take, for example, an audience that's retail or maybe in food services. So let's imagine a company that has franchised fast food restaurants across the country. Do you think onboarding is a critical component in terms of their cost structure? Absolutely it is, especially with high turnover rates within that job function. So if you could have a chatbot not only help people get sped up to productivity, but act as a gauge to see and maybe identify those new hires that are at risk. And if it does identify people at risk, wouldn't it be great if their manager could be notified right away? It's a lot easier to help resolve concerns that a new hire has before they've already decided to leave. Once they've decided to leave, it becomes very difficult to change their mind. And so part of what we have in our platform is a notification layer. And so where you can create a notification email that gets sent to a manager, or in this screenshot, a mentor. It can be a mentor, it could be a manager, so that when the chatbot can identify someone. So let me give you a concrete example. Let's say after a week, the chatbot says, "Hey, Vince, you've been here a week. On a scale of 1 to 7, how's it going?" And if someone answers 4 or below, you could then have a chatbot send an email right to the manager to say, hey, Vince is not having a great experience. Here are 3 things you can do, or 3 conversations you can have with Vince to find out what's going on, or maybe to resolve concerns or to help Vince feel more successful. I think could be a really powerful add-on to what a chatbot can do. So let's go into our script library. And we do have some onboarding scripts. And you can see here we've got a new employee onboarding daily script, a 4-week chatbot supporting onboarding new employees checks in daily. This one checks in 3 times a week. This one checks in once a week. So, you've got all these different options. We have a new manager onboarding. So let's click on this daily script one. See what kind of things it shows. And so you can kind of read. I'm going to just slowly scroll so you can take screenshots, or you can just sort of speed read some of the types of messages that are in here. So in here, when we have multiple choice, because this is a script library, of course, you can fill all of these in. You just edit them. When you double click, you can edit the copy. So there's a lot of just put in the link here, or put in your priorities here. So this is week 1 on Monday. Good morning. So let's look at this. Good morning implies that this is being sent in the morning. So you can see here it's being sent at 11 a.m. In the calendaring there. So hopefully that is making some sense to you. So that's onboarding. Any questions or comments about training reinforcement or onboarding? Let me just pause here and see if there are any questions. So see, there's a question in the Q&A. How do you program non-clear answer recognition by oh yeah, okay. So there's a couple ways to handle that. You can handle it in the mobile coach platform. Actually, let me go back and show you. Hopefully, Wojciech, I'm sorry, I just butchered your name, but hopefully you got here on time to try the demo, the trivia game. So I'll show you an example of that. So let's say, so the question here is, which natural disaster is measured with a Richter scale? And so we have a multiple choice question: A, hurricanes; B, earthquakes; C, tsunamis; D, tornadoes. People could answer this question a lot of different ways. They could do typos. They might say A, they might say hurricanes. They might just say, they might misspell hurricanes. So there are a couple ways to handle that in the mobile coach platform. One is, if you want this to be rules-based, so you want to have full control of the user experience, then we have options where you can take the user response and have an exact match. That's what this matches here is. You can decide to do a contains. So if someone's answer contains hurricanes, then then you can match that. Or an advanced setting is, we use a regular expression. That's what this is here. Regular. This is shorthand for regular expression. This REGEXP is shorthand for regular expression. And so what that is doing is accounting for looking for things like the letter A as a standalone for hurricanes, a part of hurricanes like HURR, things like that, where we're anticipating all the different ways someone might say hurricanes, and then we're matching against that. And using this approach, we find has about 99% efficacy. So it's pretty good. If you want 100% efficacy, then we do have an AI plugin, which I'm going to show you here in a moment. And there's pros and cons. And so the pros with this approach, this rules-based approach, is that you can fully control the user experience. And so in the 1% chance where you're not understanding it, you can actually flag it and then have a rule that will go figure out what's happening or alert a human. And so, that oftentimes works really well when you really need to control the user experience. But if you want to have it interact with AI, then I'm going to show you how that works here in a minute. But then the cost of that is that AI will answer however it wants. You can train the AI to answer sort of the way that you want, but it's not like an exact prescriptive answer. So yeah, so hopefully that answers your questions. 2 ways to handle non-standard answers and typos, things like that. Okay, we're going to move on to the next use case, which is performance support. So let me go back to my slides. Watching the clock, I do need to keep scooting here. So performance support is having a chatbot. So far with training, reinforcement, and onboarding, these are use cases that really the primary user experience that you're architecting is scheduling pushes, every day or a couple times a week. And of course, you're wanting to put the chatbot on a messaging platform that supports push messages like Microsoft Teams or SMS or Slack. Performance support, the primary use case is waiting. So you're waiting till a learner has a need, and then they're asking the chatbot for the need, and then the chatbot should respond immediately with the need. So for example, Coach Sally is just a resource for, let's say, my sales team. Someone says, oh, what's the new product line pricing again? I can't remember. The chatbot's there 24 hours a day to answer the question. So that's the idea for performance support. With AI, so another really great use case for performance support is an acronym bot. I mean, raise your hand if your company or your industry has too many acronyms. It's probably everybody. Thanks, Laura. So yeah, you can program your chatbot with all these acronyms. And I love this use case because imagine a new hire coming on and being so confused about what all these acronyms are, and a chatbot that can be there at just a click away to answer what my acronyms are, I think is a really great use case for performance support. And then here's another one where you can get some suggestions on what courses to take too. This is a screenshot from an LMS demo. So now what I want to do is show you, so in one of the things that has been really game-changing this year with our platform is integrating with AI. So performance support ideas like I've shown you now have worked really well for like commonly asked questions like product line pricing or what's this acronym. But what if you're really trying to coach someone or help someone through a more difficult question that they have? So I want to give you an example of this. So let's all try this. Coming into here now. So Marina, this is the time, if you could copy and paste this link into the chat. This is an ethics conversation simulator. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how we're integrated with AI, how this is going to support with both performance support and coaching. So this is a web widget, but of course this could be the same experience on Teams or on SMS. And so if you could go through this, I'm doing this on my screen so you can see me do it too. But there's a bunch of initial programmatic messages that are teaching me about basic ethics in my workplace. And then it's going to give me a scenario. Let's practice with a couple scenarios. It's going to give me a scenario, and then it's going to ask me a question. So we'll all kind of do this together. So let's read this first scenario. You've been working hard on a project with one of your peers. Well, in reality, you've been doing most of the work, but that's okay. This project is in your area of expertise. You've enjoyed working on it. However, when it comes time to present the project to the higher-ups, your peer explicitly takes credit for the work you did. What will you do if your peer takes credit for the work you did during the project presentation? So if all of you are on this, please take the time to answer the question. If you're not in a position to do so, you can watch me answer the question. So I will, what would I do if my peer takes the credit? I'll probably act passive aggressively and stew over the experience for a time. Okay, so now, okay, well, we'll all, I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I'll pause and let everyone try this. Can you just, if you're trying this, just pause for half a second, give me a thumbs up so I know that some of you are trying it. Thank you, Bruce. Anyone else giving this a try? If okay, there, I see some thumbs up floating now. Great. Okay, I'm just gonna, I know for me anyway, it's hard for me to multitask and do something and listen at the same time, but for the sake of time, I'm just gonna keep moving forward. So here is how this chatbot has been configured, and this is where we get into the AI component of it, addressing Mitch's question earlier. So the first 8 or 9 messages were programmed, right? One thing after the other, send this image, send this scenario. But now when the chatbot asked the question, what was the question? What will you do? If in this scripting environment, it'd be very difficult, if not impossible, to anticipate how all of you might answer this question. So this is where it's really useful to use AI to take over the user experience. So I'm going to show you how this is done. So I'm going to first show you through an image. Okay. Those of you that have tried ChatGPT or Bard or Microsoft Bing, this is essentially a graph of what the experience is. You go onto their website, you ask the chatbot a question. LLM stands for a large language model, which is what Bard and ChatGPT and Bing are. All the data stored in a central server. It was trained by publicly available information, and it's going to answer you. It's actually quite a remarkable experience if you've tried it. It's not a perfect experience. Sometimes the LLM is wrong or kind of funky. Sometimes the term is that it will hallucinate and just provide made up information. But by and large, I think all of us have been very impressed by the quality of the interactions that we can have. Part of the challenge, though, in an organization, if you want to use this for learners, is that this is a consumer experience. So if one of your learners asks ChatGPT a question, you don't know what it's asking, let alone have any influence on how the chatbot's answering the question. And that doesn't begin to address some of the security concerns. So using Mobile Coach, you can think of Mobile Coach as a controlling platform for this user experience. And so now all of a sudden, when the user is interacting with the chatbot, which you have created using Mobile Coach, so it's now no longer a ChatGPT chatbot, it is your chatbot. And so when they ask a question to the chatbot, we're intercepting their answer, and then which gives you visibility on what they're asking. But then we can also tell ChatGPT very detailed information about your context. So we can put an invisible prompt behind their question, send that along to ChatGPT or Bard or Bing. And when the LLM responds, we can intercept their response too and keep track of that. We can also put some rules around that too. We can scrub it. We can look for yellow flags. We can reject it. There's all sorts of things that we can do until we're comfortable with the answer, and then pass that along back to the answer or back to the user. And then, and in advance, we could have programmed the AI with your knowledge base, so it's smart about your content. So if we go back to this user experience, then let's see where it is. So here's a screenshot of this ethics chatbot. What will you do? So I answered, I'm not sure. I usually get passive aggressive. In the background, we're capturing the user's response, and then we're putting in like this. This is an example of an invisible prompt that we're going to send to ChatGPT. And I'm not going to read this. You can sort of speed read this on the right. But this prompt can be actually paragraphs and paragraphs of instruction. And what we have found in this type of integration is that this, by an order of magnitude, improves the quality of the response coming back from the chatbot. And not only that, can really ensure that the chatbot's going to answer using your vernacular, using sort of your, ethics, verbiage, and philosophies, and things like that. And so this has been a wonderful way to integrate with AI. So I'm going to show you how this works in the platform. So far, we've only dealt with the scripts tab. We haven't even touched these other tabs. So if I go to my content tab, I can establish an API connection over here. And I can establish an API connection with OpenAI for ChatGPT, but also with Google, if that's what you prefer, or Amazon, if that's what you prefer. So it doesn't have to be ChatGPT, but in this case, we are integrated with ChatGPT. I have created custom fields where I'm saving the user message. See this custom field, GPT current user message. I'm saving that so that I can repurpose it, so that when I send it to ChatGPT, I can package it with a broader prompt, and then I can save the GPT response as well. This is going very quickly through this configuration, so hopefully you can follow along. If any of you want access to this or want to play with this in more detail, let us know afterwards. We'd be happy to have you play around with it. But then now we can, if you come down here, you can see in my actions, I'm embedding all this extra information for ChatGPT to interact with my user. So let me just go back to the diagram here really quick. So the user might say, whatever I said, I might act passive aggressively. That's a pretty short prompt. And what we're doing is that we're adding a bunch of more information to ChatGPT. So when it comes back, hopefully the user experience is much more targeted and everything's being saved. And so this is a great, use case for performance support. So if, for example, if I'm asking, let's say that you want a performance support to help customer service reps, and they're asking questions about how to, how do I delete a customer, or how do I look up pricing for a customer? They're going to ask questions that are very natural to them, and you can add a bunch of prompts to just ensure that the LLM is going to answer the way that you want it to. You can upload it with job aids. You could upload it with links to how-tos and all sorts of things, and that makes the user experience very rich. And also, to answer the question earlier about non-clear answer recognition, the chatbot using AI does a really great job of trying to interpret typos and sort of unintended, weirdly worded responses. Here's another example, just one more example for coaching. This is a screenshot of a chatbot that's coaching someone on weight loss. So at Mobile Coach, we've had quite a bit of experience with healthcare related use cases. And in the past, as you might imagine, it was very sort of accountability focused. But now with this AI integration, we can do things like have the chatbot ask, what are you struggling with today? So if the user says, I'm struggling with cravings, then in the background, we can do all sorts of things with the prompt. Like we can tell AI, well, this user is a 23-year-old woman trying to lose 20 pounds through this specific weight loss system. Here's sort of our philosophy. Here's what to say, what not to say. Then all of a sudden the coaching can be really meaningful. It can be a back and forth actual coaching conversation. And this, I wanted to show the weight loss experience because it shows you how we can put in variables of custom fields into the dynamic prompt, like age and gender and sort of goal for how many pounds someone's trying to lose. And hopefully you can connect the dots with that and a learning use case where maybe you'd want the chatbot to answer differently based on job function or tenure. So if the question is, what are you struggling with today in your team? And someone says, well, I'm struggling getting along with my manager. Do you want the chatbot to answer differently if someone's, brand new, this is their first job out of college, or someone who's got 20 years of tenure? Maybe you'd want the chatbot to answer differently and meet people where they are. And so you can create these dynamic prompts using our platform and custom fields to inform AI more about the context of the user. And then these coaching conversations can be much more personalized and meaningful. And so far, the work we're doing here has been so exciting. to address both coaching use cases and performance support use cases. So, I just want to, I'm just looking at the clock, and so I just want to show really quick. The mobile coach platform is designed as you sort of envision on a whiteboard. Here's exactly what we'd want our chatbot to interact with for our target audience. Maybe your audience are people that don't have computers; they're on their feet, or maybe your audience are executives. Maybe your audience are salespeople that are out, not in the office. So many different audience contexts. So we want to give you all these different tools as you brainstorm on this whiteboard of the ideal chatbot to help your people be successful, to help your people learn. We have all these different modules that you can use. You can use all of them. You can use some of them to really support your audiences. So it can be multilingual. You can use gamification. You can use AI. There are all sorts of features in our platform to help enable what your ideal the ideal chatbot that you imagine. So I'm going to park here with some resources that you can copy if you'd like, or we'll also send a link to these in the follow-up email. But I wanted to pause and see if there are other questions. I want to use the last 5 minutes for questions. So if you've got questions in you've put them in the chat in the Q&A. Mitch asks, are the GPT responses filtered? Looks like Sterling's answering that question. But yes, you can. I'm not quite sure what you mean, but yeah, when the GPT answer comes back, we are saving that answer in a custom field, and you can run rules on the custom field and filter those answers if you'd like. I think that's what you might mean. If you mean something else, please clarify. So another question, let's assume we want to use the chat to support training on heavily IP secure technology. Can this be done safely? So let me come back here. And one of the benefits of using our platform is, first, you can choose the LLM of your choice. Some have different sort of terms of services. So the quick answer is yes, you can have it be very safe if there's high sensitivity to IP. Where what this graph tries to convey visually is that you almost have your private GPT. So you're uploading your highly sensitive knowledge base into your instance of an LLM. And if you're limiting access to your chatbot to your people, then this would be very safe to do. And as you might imagine, it's a very common request where people want to use the advantages of a chatbot and AI, but the nature of their content is so sensitive, they just need to ensure that no one else has access to it. So that's a big benefit of using our platform. Thanks for your question. Any other questions I can answer for you? Well, thank you all for joining today's webinar. I hope you got something out of it. Again, we will send a link to the recording. We'll send these slides. I'll say, if any of you are interested in banging around on the platform, trying to create your own chatbot, please respond to the email that we will send to you. We'd love to have you build your own chatbots and try it out. And we've got a lot of experience. We've had thousands of chatbots on our platform, so we'd be happy to help you with the design, your strategy, anything that you're envisioning here. So thank you very much. Thanks for joining today. Hope everyone has a wonderful day. And again, kudos to everyone for hopping on the day after a holiday here in the US. Kudos to you. Thank you. Take care, everyone.